Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this program of Friends of Elephant in collaboration with the IUCN Species Survival Commission and the Asian Elephant Specialist Group and the Wildlife Trust of India, presenting Elephants of Malaysia, Malaysian women's contribution to science and conservation. A very hearty welcome to all our guests and our participants for taking time off on this Sunday evening to join us for this talk. Before we begin the talk, I would like to lay down a few rules. I would request everybody to keep your mics on mute, please, especially during the talk. Your questions are most welcome to our guests, and we would encourage you to kindly put in your questions in the comment section along with whom the question is directed to. Other than these two, I think there are no more rules as such. So without any further ado, and with keeping in mind the time difference for our guests, I would like to begin today's event. Before we begin, I would like to talk a bit about Friends of Elephant. Friends of Elephant is not an organization, and it is not proposing to become one. It is an informal group of people coming together with varied expertise concerned about elephants and other wildlife. The group is a forum for disseminating knowledge linked to elephants and other wildlife science, conservation, and welfare through art, culture, literature, movies, talks, and panel discussion. Our expectation is that people who have attended our events conducted well previously at the capital and now online on their own or with proximity to people from policy making help in developing appropriate conservation and welfare measures for wildlife, including elephants. The schedule for today is as follows. We will begin with a combined talk on conserving Asian elephants in Malaysia, challenges with road development and habitat fragmentation by our guests. Excuse me. My apologies to the guests in case I'm getting the pronunciation of your names wrong. So apologies in advance. Dr. Wong, Dr. Othman, and Dr. M, followed by which we will have a conversation with our guests along with Dr. Sandeep Kumar Tiwari on what Asia learns from elephants and elephant women power of Malaysia. Following that, we will have a question and answer session with our guests. Now we would like to begin with the first part of the conversation, but before that, please allow me to introduce our guests. To begin with, I would like to introduce Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong is the principal investigator of the Research Project Management and Ecology of Malaysian Elephants and an assistant professor in the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. The project carries out multidisciplinary research to support evidence-based conservation management of wildlife elephants in Peninsular Malaysia, often engaging with government agencies, conservation agencies, engineers, social scientists, psychologists, and agriculture communities. Doctor is a member of IUCN Special Species Survival Commission, Asian Elephant Specialist Group, and she is in the joint working group with IUCN Conservation Connectivity on the Asian Elephant Transport Working Group, looking at the impacts of linear infrastructure on elephant movement. Our next expert is Dr. Othman. Dr. Othman is a Malaysian national being trained in various subjects towards the conservation of the Bornean elephant in Sabah. She is very fortunate to be able to follow and observe the daily activities and behavior of the elephant groups at Lower Kinabatangan, and she enjoys learning the personality of these elephants. She started Seratu Aatai in 2018 with a mission to create a society that willingly and capable to take responsibility to protect the elephants in Sabah. She has also been involved in various management aspects of Bornean elephant, where she was a committee member during the establishment of the latest action plan for Bornean elephant, and has been invited to speak about the plight and the conservation of these elephants, both at national as well as international levels. Elephants are close to her heart, and she plans to continue working with the species in the future. Our next guest is Dr. Cheryl M. Dr. M has been working in the field of wildlife conservation for the past 11 years. She joined WWF-Malaysia in 2014 and is presently the manager for elephant conservation. Her work focuses on mitigating human-elephant conflict and encouraging coexistence between people and elephants in Sabah through collaboration with government agencies, plantation owners, and other non-government organizations. She holds a PhD degree from University Putra, Malaysia, and her areas of expertise include conflict mitigation, habitat connection, policy advocacy, and wildlife ecology. So without taking much time, I would now request our guests to join us in the discussion.
Hello, Anusha. Should I share my screen?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's visible. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us for this talk to share about our experience working with elephants in Malaysia. Today, we are focused on the challenges with roads development and habitat fragmentation. And I'm very glad today I have my good friend, Dr. Nurzhafarina Othman and Dr. Cheryl to be with me together. Actually, I wanted Dr. Farina to be the first to introduce about elephants in Malaysia, but they have both very graciously allowed me to introduce a bit about elephants in Malaysia, because the Peninsular Malaysia where I work will be the first case study that we'll present for this evening. Yeah. So this is a map that I borrowed from Asian Elephant Specialist Group website, which shows the past and present distribution of elephants. I just want to quickly show you where is Malaysia. So you can see we have the Peninsular Malaysia that is attached to the mainland. And then we have Sabah on the Borneo Island. So Malaysia, yes, in terms of population, we have a small population compared to India. But 76% of our population stays in urban area. And in particular, Peninsular Malaysia is very much developed. We have roads crisscrossing through the peninsula, and we have high density of people in many areas. In Sabah, we have 3.5 million people there, but they are still facing a lot of challenges. And Farina and Cheryl will share with you shortly about the challenges that they face. So the main threats to Asian elephants in Malaysia is about habitat loss and fragmentation. And when we have forests being cut into pockets, by roads, this lead to a lot of many other issues. So when you have a road cutting across the forest, people will start moving in and develop farms, develop areas, and then you get more conflict. And these roads will also provide access for poachers to get into the forest. So it encourages more poaching. And hence, enforcement is an important issue for conservation in Malaysia at this moment. Of course, we also have recorded cases of elephants dying from road kills or poisoned or suspected poison and things like that. And the approaches taken, I'm just putting a general approach for Malaysia is the government has set out plans for land use planning. This is both in Peninsular and Sabah. So we see here in Peninsular Malaysia, we have the Central Forest Spine, and I will explain a bit more about why is it called Central Forest Spine. Yeah. So this plan is supposed to help us to protect the primary and secondary ecological linkages. And we are also working on conservation action plan. We have the National Elephant Conservation Action Plan. Then we have the then individual states develop their own plan. Yeah. So I was involved with the conservation action plan for Johor. So maybe I'll mention a bit about that in my talk later. And we are all working with stakeholders. So I think it's very fortunate that in Malaysia, we keep a very open door in terms of conversation, yeah, between conservation researchers, government agency, academia, and we engage with smallholders, communities, plantations, and engineers, yeah. So I'll go into the first case study from Peninsular Malaysia. So you can see from the map at the bottom, the black color are areas of forest. So from 1954 till now, the forest is shrinking. And in the remaining patches of forest, we have roads cutting across them, so creating fragmentation. So I will highlight 3 main findings from my research project. So management ecology of Malaysian elephants, we carry out multidisciplinary research on elephants. So, but today I will just touch on 3. So one is our finding on how the elephant range is shrinking, and also on how we use GPS movement of the elephants to assess how well is the ecological linkages in the Central Forest Spine corridors. And I will also discuss a bit about the impact of road on elephant movement. Okay. So in Peninsular Malaysia, we have roughly about 1,500 individual elephants. This is an estimation. And in terms of human-elephant conflict, we get about 800 cases a year or so, but this is for the reported period here, mentioned here. So Asian elephant is the totally protected species under the Wildlife Conservation Act. Yeah, and you can see here, for this map, we have the past and current elephant distribution in Peninsular Malaysia landscape. So you can see the red dots are areas where we used to have elephants 40 years ago, but now no longer. And the black dots are where we still have elephants and humans living in the same landscape. And you can, if we look at just at the human occupied landscape, we have lost about 68% of elephant range, yeah, within the surveyed area. And within the areas where we still have humans and elephants living together, 2/3 are experiencing human-elephant conflict. Yeah, so here is the Central Forest Spine that is under a master plan developed by the government. The master plan tried to link main forest compartments, forest patches. You see, we have the purple one, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are trying to link all these forest patches together. It covered about 5.3 million hectares of forested areas. Yeah. And we have a National Elephant Conservation Action Plan with managed elephant ranges. So these are the designated managed elephant ranges, and within each managed elephant range, we have protected areas. Yeah. So what MIM did is we have the support of our funder to collar 50 elephants with GPS satellite collars. So you see this elephant here, the first elephant in front. It has this GPS belt on the neck. On top of the neck, there's a box. That box will send out, yes, location of the elephants. So we are able to track the elephants and collect information. So based on their GPS movement of the elephants, we actually modeled how they move throughout the landscape, looking at environmental variables like altitude, agriculture areas, forest areas. And we developed this map on the left, where you can see the red color are the areas of high resistance to elephant movement. Yeah. And then the blue color are areas where elephants can move, and they can go to all these areas. Yeah, so there's low resistance for the elephant movement, so they can go to all these areas. And when we look at the ecological linkages, we have 37 of them, 17 primary and 20 secondary. So 57% are still functional, 25% are acceptable, but 18% are poor. That means we are afraid that these forest patches might have lost their connectivity. Yeah. So overall, the northern part of Peninsular Malaysia is doing quite okay, but the southern part, we find that the connectivity, we are losing the connectivity in the southern part. So here I'll show you the map of where we model the elephant movement using two methods. One is the least cost path, looking at the shortest distance available based on the elephant's preference, yeah, areas that they can move to. So the and the one below, we have the circuit theory, yeah. So this is another way of modeling the elephant movement based on electronics, yeah, how electrons will move. So if you look at the bottom maps, you can see the blue color is the high voltage area, if you can say. If you can imagine the elephants are tiny electrons moving through the landscape. So the blue area is where you get a high current, yeah? And the red area are areas of low movement. So we can see here, this map shows that, yes, when compared the northern part and the southern part has more blue current, which means, yeah, the elephants are being funneled into a very small area, yeah? So hence these areas, we need to pay attention to these areas in order to assess the connectivity, okay? And hence for MEME, the short form for the project. So for MEME, what we did is we started this project called Achieving Coexistence with Elephants, targeting the southern state. This is to complement existing efforts by the Wildlife Department. So the Wildlife Department, they carry out a lot of efforts to manage the conflict, but we need to tackle the connectivity of landscape. If we don't do so, then there's a danger that the elephants have no safe passage to walk through. They will go into the where the villages are and where the plantations are, and what we want to avoid. Yeah, we want to avoid elephants going to the human area. So we would like to create some safe passages for the elephants to go through, and we are working in collaboration with NGOs, including WCS Malaysia, Earthworm Foundation, and major plantations, which include Sandabi Plantation, Feldar, and many more. And we work closely with governmental agencies. So we need to involve Wildlife Department. Of course, if we want to touch the elephants, we need to work with the Wildlife Department. But we also need to work with the Forestry Department and also the Land Office and many more. And next, I'd like to share with you our findings for the roads. So from our collared elephant, we did model the movement of the elephant in one of the landscape called Belum Temenggur. This is in the northern part of Peninsular Malaysia. So when we look at the movement of the elephants, we find that they like to hang out beside the road, but they are not able to cross the road. Yeah, so there is some, barrier. The road has become a barrier to the elephant movement. So if you look at the graph on the bottom left, you can see the individual elephants, and you can see the blue dot with the black line cutting across, showing the range of the elephant's movement. And the red line at the point of 0 means that if the blue dot and the black line touches the red vertical line, it means that the road is not a barrier. Yeah, but as it is, you can see that all the elephants, including the translocated elephants or the resident elephants, they are at the negative range of the road permeability. It means the road is a barrier to the elephant movement. But it doesn't mean that they cannot cross. At times, they will still be able to cross. And you can see the graph on the right side. We have the black bars, the tall black bars here. That shows the crossing of the elephants when they cross the road. So we marked how many times they cross the road. And we find that they tend to cross more at night compared to daytime. So you can see the local resident elephants, we have about 10 elephants here that are resident elephants in that area. They tend to cross more at night and less during the day. We are speculating that is because of the road traffic is usually higher during the daytime. And on the right side here, you can see the bars, but they are much lower. So these are the behavior of the translocated elephants. So these elephants are elephants that venture into conflict areas, and they were caught and moved and released at these forested areas. So 7 of them were released there, and you can see that in terms of their behavior crossing the road is much less. It shows that if the elephant is not familiar with the landscape, they will not be able to cross the road as much. And I will show you a case study of this elephant called Jalong. So I hope you can see this video of the movement of the elephants. The yellow line is the highway, the Greek Jelly Highway, and you can see Jalong was released there. And for 17 months, she did not cross the road, but she just walked up and down the road, up and down the road. Then after 17 months, her behavior changed. She was able to cross the road, and she was moving around more. So, and when we tracked and we followed her, what we found is that during that time, shortly before she crossed the road, she actually gave birth to a calf. So she actually gave birth to a baby. And after that, she decided that she wants to cross the road. I was actually studying the hormones of the elephant, using dung. And I can see the change in the hormone level as well. So it's very interesting that after giving birth, she decided that, okay, now I want to venture to the other part of the forest, and she managed to cross the road. So I guess what I like to emphasize here is that roads can be a barrier to elephant movement, and that will have complications. And at the same time, we find that elephants do like to hang out beside the road because of the availability of food there. You can see here, this is a nice grassy patch right beside the road. You can see elephant dung here. So they have been resting at this grassy patch. But at the same time, when the elephants are near to the road, they are exposed. They are exposed to poachers. And here I have one of my elephants, collared elephants, that was killed by a poacher less than 200 meters away from the road in the same area. So you can see that roads pose a lot of issues. Once you have access, people can venture in, and it's not easy to manage in terms of wildlife enforcement. So for Malaysia, the Wildlife Department has put a lot of emphasis on wildlife enforcement, and they have captured 3 elephant poacher groups. And if you can look at the picture, the next picture here, you can see these elephant poacher groups. They are not small timers, yeah, they are syndicates. Look at the firepower that they have, the guns that they have, the bullets and all. So they are not easy to tackle and very dangerous. And of course, when you have roads cutting across forests, you get accidents like this. This is a baby elephant killed, yeah, when it was crossing the road with the herd. So this picture of this baby elephant went viral on social media. And in September 2018, meme, we wrote an article and we submit that to the Juruterra Bulletin. So this is a professional magazine catering to engineering community. So we managed to reach out to 25,000 engineers. Yeah, and we can see that the impact of this outreach is the Association of Consulting Engineers Malaysia actually approached me and they say, can you join us for a conference on road ecology? We would like to share this awareness with more engineers. And we call a few other research groups, other researchers, conservationists. In fact, yes, Sabah, there's researchers from Sabah joining the conference to talk about orangutans. Yeah, so it was very good to have that engagement between researchers, conservationists, and also engineers. And it was during that conference as well, we engaged with members of the IUCN Asian Elephant Transport Working Group, and they invited meme and the Wildlife Department of Malaysia to join this Asian Elephant Transport Working Group. So in this working group, in fact, Dr. Sandeep is the co-chair of this working group. Yeah, so we have a lot of members from different Asian elephant range countries, and we are sharing case studies and developing a primer on the impact of linear infrastructure and also the mitigation measures. So for example, here I actually shared about the case study of viaducts in Terengganu Kenyir. So here the authorities have lift up the road in order to allow elephants to cross at the bottom. So, but we still need a lot more studies to actually examine how effective these measures. So I think it's good for conservationists, researchers, and engineers to work together to assess the effectiveness of the structure. Definitely, there's still a lot of room to work together. So in summary, just like to share that, yes, Peninsular Malaysia, we have experienced rapid development and growth. We have this network of highways crisscrossing the landscapes. Yes, the government authorities have installed underpasses to facilitate the elephant movement, but we are just beginning to understand the impact of linear infrastructure, yeah, including the effect it has on poaching and other matters. So hence, we recommend that avoiding forest fragmentation should always be the first priority. And if you have an existing road, then if the road traffic increases or if the road expand, yeah, from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, it may reduce the landscape connectivity for the elephants. Hence, yes, a lot of room for us to work together to see how to minimize the impact. So what I guess what I'm trying to share here is the experience that we have in Peninsular Malaysia. And later on, Cheryl and also Farina will talk about Borneo and the threats emerging in Borneo. So definitely from our working experience, we find that working hand in hand with stakeholders from traditional and non-traditional conservation background are key for managing habitat fragmentation and human-elephant conflict. So it's important not to work in silo, but to engage with experts from different fields and from other countries. Yeah, so that is all from my side. Yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Doctor. I would now request the next speaker to please take over.
All right, can you hear me? All right, good. And you can see my screen? Okay, all right. No, nobody say no, so I guess everyone could see my screen now. Good evening from Sabah. Thank you very much again for spending a little bit your weekend with us, and thank you to Dr. Sandeep Tiwari for inviting us. This topic is actually very close to like my heart now, because we are in the middle of trying to convince our government in Sabah about one of the mega infrastructure project. So the idea is to put Ipin as to begin the talk is not is something that we plan, because we have to learn from what West Malaysian has experienced before. All right, so just before I go to the topic on the road, let me just introduce to you a little bit about our Bornean elephants. So Malaysian are very lucky. We have two subspecies of Asian elephants. One live in the east of Sabah. Sandeep, you want to say something?
Can you put it in the PowerPoint mode, please?
Oh, all right. Sorry. Thank you so much for. Okay, thanks. Yeah, is it better? Okay, thanks. All right. So in Sabah, it's very important to know that you can only find Bornean elephants in the east coast of Sabah, and as well a little bit into North Kalimantan. So there is no elephants in Sarawak or in Brunei. That's very important to know, because then it means that the distribution of the Bornean elephant is very limited. And remember, they also only distributed in the east coast of Sabah. So you don't find, and this area is actually also very good for, like development agriculture activities and stuff like that. So there are a lot of conflicts and between the needs to develop for people and also to keep some the habitat intact for the wildlife, flora and fauna. Three main managed elephant ranges, which is two is isolated from each other: the Lower Kinabatangan, the Tabin managed MER, and Central Sabah MER. The Central Sabah has the biggest numbers of elephants. The last population estimation was done in 2006. The data was published in 2010. Showed that maybe we have around 2,000 elephants, but based on our experience working in Kinabatangan, and I think Cheryl also did a current, like latest estimation, we believe that there are less than 2,000, more or less like 1,500 elephants, wild elephant live left in Sabah. So it's very, very important to try to, work harder now and focus on elephant conservation in Sabah. All right, so let me give you just some context. Ipin mentioned about Central Forest Fine in Peninsular Malaysia, and we have more or less the same initiative in Borneo, which is known as the Heart of Borneo. It was initiated in 2007 by WWF. The idea is to try to protect the remaining, whatever leftovers forest in Borneo, to make sure that we don't lose everything, for other human activities. So three governments signed, the Indonesian government, Malaysian government, and also Brunei. They signed, an agreement to protect, all these forests, and then, but we realized that in 2009, a group of academicians, 2017, a group of academicians from James Cook University realized that this initiative to protect the forest in Borneo might be jeopardized by infrastructure development like the Pen Borneo Highway. So a little bit, so their finding was published in the paper that you can see here. I mentioned this, so you can go and maybe you can Google it. So the Pen Borneo Highway is actually the idea to connect these three countries, and then it will be done from Sarawak to connect to up to Tawau, the east coast of Sabah. In Sabah, it will be done in 3 phases. Phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. Here in this map, it's better. You can see I zoom into Sabah. So currently, the phase 1 is happening right now, which is in the red line over there. So it will cover, if I'm not mistaken, about 700 plus kilometer. So in this area, we are not, we believe that it's very important to have a highway route so that you can help people, you can, help the economic, but we have to avoid, certain sensitive area. In this case, we have identified 4 area which is quite sensitive, very, very sensitive. So for your information, the Sabah government, the Sabah Wala Department, and as well as Sabah government, they have passed or they have approved actually 4 action plans to protect, to protect endemic species and of Borneo in Sabah, like the elephants action plan, proboscis action, and in all these action plan mentioned that the priority should be given not to disturb or fragment more habitat for all these species. So the Kudat Tuaran, the idea for this highway is to either build new roads or upgrade from 2 lanes road to 4 lanes road, right? So for example, the Tuaran to Kudat road will impact mangrove, which is the habitat for the proboscis monkey. The one in Telupit and Kinabantangan, we foresee it can impact the elephant population. So, and then the one in Kalabakan in Tawau area will impact bunting and also Sunda clouded leopard. So although all this is been mentioned in the action plan, unfortunately, we still have to kind of remind people who is in charge of this project about this. I'm going to focus my presentation on the Telupit area. So a little bit of history to about this work package. This area is currently it's not happening yet, but there are several. We have been talking about this since 2017. So since James Cook University revealed to us the map and the potential of all this infrastructure development project, how it could affect the Heart of Borneo and also the the flora and fauna that lives in this forest, we begin to find more informations because there are not many available. So a group of people from, I will mention this in the 3H coalition, for our colleagues in Forest Sabah, they gathered all the people who works on animals, on having different expertise and skill to find out that, okay, what is happening, what are the things that live in this forest, try to engage with government agencies to try to figure out how the alignment should looks like, because all of this is not available anywhere. So we really have to start engage with people. So the idea is at the beginning, the current road is the one in the gray color there. If you can see the gray line there, so that's the current 2-lane road, right? But after, the idea is to just upgrade these 2 lanes to 4 lanes, but the local communities that live along the road, they disagree, because when they upgrade the road, then it will, they will have to sacrifice their lands, their homes, so they send a petition to the government saying that we don't want this, and then the government decided to, okay, let's plan for another alignment, and the easiest one is actually to go through the Tawai Forest Reserve. So for your information, Tawai Forest Reserve is a first class forest reserve. So it's I guess easier to go through this, because then you don't have to deal with many people and things like this. So, and then obviously, once we know this, Danau Ground Field Center and also the community elephant ranger team, they did an observation. They call it elephants, and as you can see, I mean, I don't have to explain further. The green dots there is all elephants. From the collect data by Danau Ground Field Center. So we can see that this the alignment that will go through Tawai Forest Reserve, it will affect elephant movement, elephant habitat. Although currently this road is actually a logging route, but elephant use it, quite frequently. I mean, quite heavily. There are a lot of food resources for them, and then so it's very clear that this will increase if the road or the highway is built there. Then we can learn from what happened in Peninsular Malaysia in terms of conflicts, in terms of poaching, and so it's a very, very serious situation. So right now, this is the current road. As you can see, 2 lanes, a lot of traffic, quite heavily. And
ada si bos di dalam kereta,
so a baby elephant, has been separated from the group. And then, a lot people doesn't know how to deal with this stuff, So if I can translate a bit, the driver said that, oh, I will die. The elephant is going to hit my car. It's only a baby elephant. And then, like instead of trying to stop the traffic or something, so people doesn't know how to deal with this. So I imagine that if you have 4 lanes, road, and then it's a straight highway, so I don't know what to imagine. And then the community elephant ranger team as well, they they also collect the damages reports of what happened, the conflicts report, and you can see that even without the road, the elephants keep coming to the villages now. So imagine if we cut more, or we disturb more of the habitats of the elephants. So I imagine that there will be more conflicts with people. Another video, if I can share.
The following was a recording from 23rd of February 2018. A small herd of elephants entered Kampung Kambarong seeking food. The villagers made loud noises by shouting and firing noise cannons to deter the elephants, which in turn caused a stressful situation.
All right. So it's although without the highway, the community elephant ranger team, wildlife department is having such a difficult situations to try to explain to the village, to the local communities about why the elephants are coming into their villages. So imagine if this conflicts or the highway, already there, then it will be the situation will be
The
worse.
following
So it's not only about the elephants, because a lot of people come to us and say that, oh, it's okay, the elephants, they know, they can adapt and they are very intelligent. It's not only about the elephants, it's also about other species as well that really depends, on the forest. Like we have this, it is the community, the set team, they put an efforts to put camera traps along the area where they're going to build this highway. And you can see this is only some of the pictures that I could share with you. What I want to highlight is this, the Bornean peacock pheasants. So it's endemic, little known about them. The first record, I think records was made in 1890s, if I'm not mistaken. And then about a century later, in 1996, they found another specimen of this bird in more or less near the Ulu Tongot area. And then, if I'm not mistaken, in 1998, they found another occurrence of these birds in Kinabatangan, also in Danang Valley. And now you can see it's appeared in the camera trap in this forest where they will build this highway. So it's really easy to kind of digest, but when you are talking about money and development, so you really have to engage with people and try to convince everyone. And we don't forget, it's not only for the animals, but it's also for the people. So, for example, this Tawai Forest Reserve is actually a watershed for the communities in Telupit. So, imagine if there is no more, clear water for people. So it will be very, very hard for the local community over there. And this is actually one of the river that the cert found it in the forest reserve. It's very crystal clear water. It could be there are a lot of potential for this area to attract, to become like tourism assets for Tulpit area. So realizing the importance of Tawai, we know that we really have to fight for it. And Forest Sabah took initiative to set up or to curated the human habitat highways in 2017. And until now, there are 10 organizations that are working together, exchanging skills, expertise, to try to figure out, okay, what's next step? How do we want to present all the information that we have to whom? Because there are a lot of changes in the government as well. So we need to get to know more people and engage again and again. So it's very important to work as a group. Also, what we do as a group is that we produce so many reports. The latest one is this one, which have all the information from the camera traps, from the movement of the elephants. What we suggest, we in the report, we give not only the problem, but we also give solutions. So, for example, after taking into account the need of the local communities and also the movement of elephants and other wildlife, we realized that the best option is either the one in yellow color there, going to the north side of Telupit, and also the blue color. I'm sorry if you cannot really see from here, but I just want to show that if either we go with Route 3 or Route 4 here, we will avoid a lot of troubles for the animals and also for the people. We are still kind of not fighting, we are still trying to convince the government, because for example, it needs some bridges, so that will be quite expensive, but the best option would be route number 3. I can give you, if anyone wants to know more about all the options here, you can visit this Human Habitat Highway website. You can see all the activities that we have done so far and what's next event. We not only producing what they call this reports, but we also try to build up the next generation. For example, we did a lot of forums with the students in the university, try to create awareness about to them about this problem. And also obviously we engage with different government agencies. So kind of the summary of my presentation is that there are three kind of key issues here. First, about the transparency. Usually, we know things at the very last minute when everything is already on the, is almost happening. Then only the academicians or NGOs, come into the picture. So this is not very good. So what we recommend is that the government to form kind of a joint committee, between different people so that they will get more information and come up with the best plan. And then the second one is about the environmental impact assessment, the social impact assessment. All of this is not very clear. There are a lot of things should be changed, so that it can be more transparent and it will allow, public participation since the beginning. And the key issue is about communication. So our recommendation to the government is to organize more dialogue, and this is what the 3H is currently doing and try to do more in the future. All right, so this is the work that I presented here is actually work from different organizations, and I would like to highlight two organization, Forest Sabah and the Nottingham Field Center, because they have been, heading us to what's the next one to do. So that's all from me. I pass now to Cheryl. Thank you. Okay. How can I stop sharing? Please. Okay, stop sharing. All right. Cheryl.
Okay. Hold on. Okay. So, hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl, and I hope you all are well and staying safe at home. So the focus of my presentation this evening will be on two threats that are affecting the elephants in Sabah. And the first one being the road development in their habitat, and the second one is habitat fragmentation and how it is linked to human-elephant conflict. So picking up from where Dr. Farina left off, so the Pan Borneo Highway program is also actually affecting the elephant range in the southern part of Sabah, linked to the northern part of Kalimantan, whereby they actually plans to develop this area from a current 2-lane to a 4-lane road. And as mentioned by Farina, this would further isolate the elephants and also other populations from the southern part of Sabah from moving further north and vice versa. So we actually have a few endangered wildlife species also present in this area. Besides elephants, there are orangutans, the Bornean bunting, Sunda clouded leopard, and also proboscis monkey. So together with the Coalition 3H, WWF has also shared our data, and for example, the map that you can see here is a map of our collared locations of the elephants, which we combined with Danau Girang, and we found that it actually this phase 3 of the Pan Borneo Highway actually overlaps with 170 kilometers of elephant range. So for example, here it's a group of elephants that we collared that's actually crossing this area here, which is still, which is the last remaining vast tract of forest left in Sabah. And so what we did for our side, for WWF, is actually we wanted to see which part of this stretch of this forest is actually has a highest, or is used, has the highest concentration of elephants. So using this collar data, we ran some analysis and we found that there are actually 3 hotspot areas within the 170 km range that is used by elephants. So it's this area here, mostly predominated by oil palm, and then some parts in protected forest and in commercial forest. So this sort of information will be used to advocate further to the government. And also together with the coalition, we are actually combining this data to provide a more comprehensive analysis, which is a hotspot analysis showing the concentration of elephants at certain times and in the frequented areas, or the amount of time that they actually spend in these highways. So by using this information, we hope to advocate to this government to look more towards sustainable development and for a win-win situation for both conservation and for socio-economic development. So now I'd like to bring your attention to the southern part of Sabah and also Indonesia, which in 2019, the President of Indonesia, President Jokowi, he actually announced in 2019 that they will shift the capital from Jakarta to East Kalimantan. And because of that, when we look at this road network map that was produced by Alamgir 2018, you can see that all these roads are crisscrossing through Kalimantan, and some of it is actually going up to reaching to bordering Sabah. And so this also actually has some spillover effects on the Sabahan side. So what our government actually did is that they actually capitalized on this relocation of the capital from Indonesia, whereby they actually announced recently in March this year that they have allocated about 150 million USD to develop a road to link the northern part of Kalimantan into Sabah, and also to set up a CIQ complex, or basically a checkpoint to monitor the control of the movement through the border. So what we did was that we worked together with our colleagues from WWF Indonesia, the Kalimantan team, to actually map out all the road networks and what is the status of these road networks. So you can see here, this is the black line here, it's the Sabah Kalimantan boundary, and the one in blue here is actually the current existing road on the Kalimantan side of the border, and the purple, the slightly pinkish one, is the one that is planned but hasn't been constructed yet. So basically the government announced that they would look into developing this road in the Serudong Forest Reserve, which is an area located within this circle. So all this is still under progress, and because from what we understand is because of the pandemic situation that this road project is still ongoing but has been postponed somewhat. So our team on the ground is actually trying to gather more information to better to get a better idea of where this alignment is. So hopefully with that, and together by working with the coalition, we'll be able to use this information to further seek a better win-win solution with the government. So just now, Phin and Nurzhafarina mentioned a lot on road development, but I'd like to maybe bring a bit of your attention to habitat fragmentation due to road development and also agricultural expansion, and how it's actually affected HEC, or human-elephant conflict. And because a lot of these plantations are developed close to forest reserves, and a lot of these basically large oil palm plantation companies have erected fences to actually protect their crops and their property. So the situation becomes a problem when this is not done in coordination, whereby each neighboring plantation sets up their own electric fence. So this will further hamper the movement of elephants, preventing them to move from one forest patch to another. And if you can see here, it's a picture of a plantation that's undergoing the replanting phase. It's actually happening, we can say, throughout Sabah, and also occurring in elephant range. So for example, here these plantations undergo the replanting phase every 25 to 30 years. So basically, after that period when the yield of the oil palm crop is low, they will fell these trees and they will plant them with young seedlings. So the thing about elephants is we actually discovered that the past 2 or 3 years that they were actually increasingly attracted to these areas that were undergoing chipping. I'll show you with a video here. So it's an elephant here, and you can spot a few in the background and a chipping machine. Yeah, so this is actually a footage that we got from 3 of our collared elephants. So what we found really interesting was that these 3 groups of elephants, which is around 60 to 70 elephants, were found feeding at in a particular plantation for almost 2 months, whereby they will come out during the evening and in the night to actually feed in these areas. And it's because of this, what you call it, the heart of the oil palm tree, which has been chipped. It's actually very fresh and succulent and even sweet. So this actually draws the elephants to this area. And we've also seen that the elephants have also become increasingly habituated to the machine. So whenever the machine starts operating, you can see like almost within like 15 to 20 minutes, the elephants will actually come out from the adjacent forests or areas where they're hiding to actually come and feed on this area. So this in itself is not actually an issue, because we actually seen that a lot of these plantations allow these elephants to actually feed on this, in this area, to allow elephants to feed in this area. But the issue arises on what happens next, which is when the replanting happens. So basically that's when they start to plant the oil palm area with young oil palm seedlings. And then that would make them have to, set up or install these electric fences to protect their crops. So what we did is that since 2014, we actually developed a few strategies to address this human-elephant conflict situation and also fragmentation of their habitat. So the first one is that we actually established a working group. So it's actually a multi-stakeholder working group consisting of government enforcement agencies. So this includes the Forestry Department, Wildlife Department, and the Sabah Foundation, as well as the plantation owners that are facing conflict, to actually come together to jointly implement mitigation measures. And the second one is that we also tagged the elephants since 2013 to better understand the use of the area and their requirements, so that we can use this to better provide decision-making or to inform decision-making to our stakeholders. And the third one is actually a project that WWF is just piloting, which is a plantation area in the eastern part of Sabah, whereby we're trying to engage with these communities through awareness programs and capacity building activities to increase their tolerance towards elephants over the long term, so that they can better manage the conflict situation. So right now, I'd actually like to share one of these case studies which we did in the southern part of Sabah, in a plantation called Sabah Softwoods Berhad. So one thing special about this plantation is that it's a mixed land use plantation. So basically, it's an oil palm plantation, which you can see by the areas colored in orange. And it's also a tree plantation, which you can see in dark green. So tree plantation areas are basically areas that are planted with fast-growing tree species to supply for wood chips or sawn timber, which they use in producing furniture and all sorts of laminated stuff. So what we did was that we engaged with this company to provide information on better spatial planning within their plantation. So one of it involves the recommendations from our side to actually set aside a corridor to enable elephants to move from the fragmented Ulu Kalumpang Forest Reserve to the main central forest block. So this corridor was actually established in 2012 and is about 13 kilometers long, and the size is about 1,060 hectares. And besides that, we also have been working with this company to realign their fences. So basically, this means to remove the fences in some parts of their plantation and to allow elephants to, and only to remove them and to place them in areas which are vulnerable. So basically areas which are like settlements or young oil palm areas, which we know that the crop damages that would be substantial. And to basically allow elephants to access other parts of their plantation. So for example, here are mature tree plantations where they have reached a certain age. So the elephants are no longer able to reach those areas. So the damages are minimal. And also within their tree plantation areas, the elephants were able to move within those areas to access the wildlife corridor. So using that model, we actually expanded it in 2016 when we established this working group, because we noticed that, you know, just by working with one plantation is not alone is not enough. The whole issue is affects the whole landscape. So we use this landscape approach, and through this working group, we got 11 plantation companies on board, which are basically all these colorful areas here. So just to bring your attention here is that through this working group, we were able to get information on where they had plans to plant oil palm in their area or newly developed oil palm areas. So these are basically the areas that are cross-hatched and areas that are undergoing replanting. And also through this working group, we were able to get information on where they place their electric fences. So for example, this area in red here. So basically what plantations here in Sabah do is that every company just sets up their own fences because it's cheaper that way. But through this landscape approach, we wanted to look at it in a way which to allow elephants to use this whole landscape from the Ulu Kalumpang Forest Reserve right up to the Central Forest Reserve, and to use certain parts of these plantations to ensure the continuous movement even through areas that are undergoing development. So through that, we actually came up with 4 action points, or we call site-specific mitigation measures. So very briefly, the first one is area which we advocated, which was the setting aside of 80 hectare of a corridor or connectivity area through an area that was to be planted with oil palm, so that elephants could move through this area into the tree plantation areas. And from then on, use this Ulu Kalumpang, the wildlife corridor, and the main central forest block. And the other one was that for the plantation company to allow elephants to use their riparian area or their river zones. So basically allow elephants to use the river zones and to fence on both sides. So using these mitigation measures, so this is also the same for the neighboring plantation companies. So you can see this in the areas that are labeled 2, 3, and 4. It actually enable these site-specific mitigation measures. These plantation companies would allow these elephants to use these riparian areas right up to the Virgin Jungle Reserve and then up into the main central forest block. So this was this working group actually happened, was an ongoing project which happened for the past 3 or 4 years. And towards the end of the project, we actually wanted to see if the elephants were still able to use these areas after these areas have undergone change. So what we did was that using the locations of 2 of our collared elephants, which can be seen by this blue and the pink areas here. So 2016 is when the working group was established. And in 2017 and 18 is when this plantation started to adopt these mitigation measures. And then in 2019, 2020, you can actually see more clearly that once this plantation company started to fence up their young oil palm areas and setting aside their corridors and riparian areas, that the elephants were able to move through the whole landscape. So basically, from Ulu Kalumpang Reserve, they were able to move through this plantation into the virgin jungle, into the main central forest block. So this basically goes to show that with proper measures in place that it can allow elephants to continuously use the landscape. So since then, we actually have expanded this model to two other areas, which is the eastern part of Sabah, the Tabin landscape, and also to the southern part of Sabah, where we are working with our colleagues in Kalimantan to secure this trans-boundary corridor area, because there's actually a small population of elephants that actually use this trans-boundary corridor area. So this is also part of our climate change adaptation strategy, because we know that elephants are sensitive to temperature changes and also to drought. So by securing these corridor areas, and in the event of climate change, the elephants will be able to move to areas of higher elevation and to larger forest patches. So for example, here is that after these corridors have established, we actually, our team worked on the ground together with these plantations to restore some of these corridor areas with indigenous tree species. So basically we try to restore these areas back to their natural state. So the species will be more or less what you find in the forest. So this is not only to attract elephants, but also for multi-species. So for example, here since 2014, Sabah Softwoods Berhad has already restored almost 60% of their corridor area. And we can see that a lot of different wildlife species have actually colonized and actually started using this corridor area. So basically, from our efforts on the ground, I can summarize that these efforts by Sabah Softwoods and also by other plantation companies within the landscape actually shows a paradigm shift within the plantation industry, where we actually see more and more plantations are willing to commit towards conservation and are playing a bigger role to conserve elephants and other wildlife. And also that these joint mitigation measures are crucial, especially because of the changes in the land use dynamics, where we expect HEC to increase. And also because we know that by protecting forests alone is not enough to guarantee the long-term survival of elephants. So basically we need the plantation companies, even the communities all on board in this initiative to ensure the survival of the species in the long term. And also one of our findings showed that people, especially the industry, can coexist with elephants in a shared landscape using shared resources with certain mitigation measures are put in place. And as mentioned by Ipin and Farina, it's also very crucial to have transparent multi-stakeholder dialogues with all relevant stakeholders so that all affected parties can voice their concerns and so that we can actually develop a win-win situation. Okay, so I've come to the end of my presentation. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences. And on behalf of the other presenters, we also want to thank you for our hosts, the Friends of Elephants, IUCN, and also the Wildlife Trust of India for having us on board to share our experience. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thanks to all the experts for sharing various case studies from across different regions of Indonesia, Malaysia, and talking to us about the different barriers that are there for the elephant movement, and also sharing the strategies that can be used to mitigate the difficulties that are arising from these various barriers. We would now like to move on to the next part of our discussion, which is the conversation with our guests by Dr. Sandeep Kumar Tiwari. The topic is What Asia Learns from Elephants and Elephant Women Power of Malaysia. I would like to quickly introduce Dr. Sandeep Kumar Tiwari ji. Dr. Sandeep Kumar Tiwari is a wildlife biologist and conservationist. He has been working for wildlife research and conservation for over 25 years. He currently works as a program manager of the IUCN SSC Asian Elephant Specialist Group and Deputy Chief of Conservation Wildlife Trust of India. He holds a master's degree in zoology and a PhD in elephant ecology and behavior. His areas of expertise include wildlife corridors, human-elephant conflict mitigation, wildlife policy, linear infrastructure, and habitat restoration. He is a member of the IUCN SSC Asian Elephant Specialist Group, IUCN WCPA Connectivity Conservation Network, Protected Landscape Seascapes Network, and Biodiversity and Protected Areas Network. He also holds a doctoral degree in alternative medicine. Welcome, sir, and I now request you to take over the discussion.
Thank you so much, Anusha, for the introduction, and great to have the three dynamic ladies from Malaysia. I call them the women power of Malaysia, and Dr. Phin, Farina, and Dr. Cheryl. They have been doing great job, great research works and conservation initiative in Malaysia. And in fact, I call them a youth icon, an icon that has not an inspiration for the young researchers in Malaysia, but I think throughout the globe, where the youth have been working for conservation, not only on elephants, but diverse species. So welcome you all, and I'm sure you all enjoyed the presentation by these three ladies from Malaysia. In fact, personally, I know them all. We have been working together in the group and in various forums that we are working with on various aspects. And in fact, was Faina for the first time showed me the Sabah elephants way back in 2017, I believe, and probably also broke through the myths that we all had. Sabah Borneo elephants, what we call is, and sometimes they're known as pygmy elephants, and probably an elephants that are too docile, but I disagree to call them a pygmy elephant. Absolutely not. Maybe little smaller size, but cannot be called a pygmy elephant. They are as good as many other elephants. And it was Farina who probably with her team from the BBC, I believe, were doing a filming on elephants and other wildlife. So when we were there, she provided an opportunity to take us to track the elephants and show us elephants. And on the very first instance of trying to track the elephants, we were mock charged by elephants. So the concept that I went with was, so docile, you can go and touch the tail. Friends, be careful, you need to respect the wildlife, and they are equally an animal that needs to be respected. So I think Dr. Phin, Dr. Farina, and Dr. Cheryl, you all have given a fabulous presentation giving an overview of the elephants both in Peninsular Malaysia and in Sabah, Borneo, and also the issues that concerns elephant conservation in the landscape. I can also see among the viewers we have Dr. Sen Nathan, who's an assistant director, Sabah Wildlife Department, and I believe Dr. Salman is also here, who's the director of the Department of Wildlife and National Parks, Peninsular Malaysia. So welcome both of you and many of our members from the ASG. Dr. Cheryl, Dr. Phin, I'll start with you.
Okay.
Two of the issues that you both flagged in terms of elephants in Malaysia is the pressure on the habitat and the resulting human-elephant conflict, and that's not only in Malaysia but probably across the land. Is a range of distribution that these issues are there. But I also believe that Peninsular Malaysia has taken a lot of lead in developing responsible infrastructures and all the mitigation measures that the government has taken, along with the the linear agencies, in creating those viaducts in many places. At least I believe there are about 7 or 8 viaducts in 2 or 3 regions in Malaysia. So just wanted to know from you, Dr. Phin, is are these underpasses being monitored to understand how has been the impact of roads and how has been the uses of these underpasses by elephants and other wildlife in this landscape? Has it facilitated movement, or still is the animals are hesitant to cross through? And probably also one more aspect that I wanted to touch upon: when we design such underpasses in many of the wildlife areas, there is one belief that probably that with channelizing of animals through these underpasses, it probably also exposes them to people with ulterior motives of trying to doing hunting or poaching and stuff like that. So is that being monitored, and what has been the outcome of that?
Well, Dr. Sandeep, I cannot speak on behalf of the Wildlife Department. I do work very closely with them and also with other researchers in Peninsular Malaysia. From what I know is the government is placing a lot of emphasis on enforcement. So the issue of roads and how it opened up access to poachers was flagged many years ago. So a lot of conservationists start to highlight the problem, with snares and all. So in terms of how effective are these viaducts and how they facilitate, poaching and things like that. So in fact, one of the researchers in Peninsular Malaysia, Dr. Ruben Clemens, he focused his research in Terengganu. Yeah. So after he completed his PhD looking at the effectiveness of the viaduct, he actually set up a research organization to work together with the Wildlife Department in terms of setting up enforcement and things like that. So and we can see this kind of initiative appearing in other landscape. I think WWF is working with Perak State Park and also Rimba, the NGO. And in the southern part of Peninsula, we have WCS and the Wildlife Department together with Forestry. They have this joint enforcement thingy. So wildlife enforcement appear to be the top priority. So we can see a lot of effort on the ground on that. And recently we have some good news. We can see that in some landscape in the northern part, there are reduction in snares when you have enough people on the ground doing patrolling, you can see a reduction in snares. But yes, it doesn't negate the fact that roads do open up these issues. Yeah. So hence other types of effort are needed, especially right now we think is the connectivity part. For elephants, because MIM has been doing our research, we have been coloring about 50 elephants in the landscape. So you get some idea of how they use the landscape. We do see elephants using some of the underpasses, but our concern is, you have maybe a stretch of road about 100 kilometers and you only have one viaduct there. Is it sufficient enough to facilitate the movement of the elephants in the landscape? So right now that road, in terms of traffic, it is still, I guess in some instances, the elephants can still cross at night. So in that sense that it is still, they are still able to cross. But if the road traffic increase, or if they expand that road into more lanes, then we are concerned that how would that affect the wildlife population? And I have to admit that we do need a lot more research, especially for other species, in the landscape. So there's still room for more researchers to carry out research on the impact of roads and linear infrastructure on other animals. We can see there are emerging groups looking at primates, setting up road bridges and things like that. But yeah, we need to see more of such efforts.
Thanks, Dr. Phin. That probably brings me to a second question is, you said that with such underpasses, long roads and few underpasses coming through, so are they really sufficient enough to take care of the wildlife movement or not? So that brings me to the second question is probably, I also believe that the Malaysian government is working on some guidelines, develop guidelines on linear infrastructures. How do they bring in and design the mitigation measures, the various specifications towards this? So any update on that is how is that going on, and how quick do you think the government? I know you're not a part of it, but since you're working that landscape, you've been discussing with them. So is there something like that coming there as well?
Yes. I'm not directly involved in the development of the guidelines, but I did have conversation with the wildlife officers, and recently, I think, through the Asian Elephant Transport Working Group, the primer, that we are working on the primer, and I actually passed that to the wildlife department for feedback, and they highlighted that, actually some of this information or on buttocks or things like that, they too have looked at experiences by other researchers all over the world, when they come up with the guidelines, to set the guidelines. So that is understandable, because if you are supposed to build an underpass and have a highway going across, first thing we do, we need to reach out to other range countries to look at what are the mitigation measures and what are the designs, and take those into consideration to build up the experience. And I believe they actually refer some to India, actually, the guidelines used for some of these underpasses.
One more aspect I would like to touch upon, Dr. Phin, is the wildlife linkages that has been identified in the central forest spines, 37 or 36, 37 odd linkages that we have identified. About 50% of them are quite high priority ones. And they are in the southern part. You said that about a quarter of them are little threatened, or the wildlife movement being hindered for various reasons. So in all these linkages that you have identified, is anything been done to protect and secure the movement of elephants and other wildlife? And are these linkages legally protected? Because I understand they passes through diverse land use. So what's the scenario there in these linkages?
Well, I would say, because it is a huge landscape, 5 million hectares is not a it's not a small landscape. So, and there are concerted efforts in some parts of the landscape where you have more presence of organizations and conservationists. So in those areas, we can see some success stories. Forest being protected. We have the Aman Jaya Reserve. We have the also in Kenyir, that's the Kenyir corridor. So we can see some success stories in that sense. They managed to protect the ecological linkage. But yes, in some areas where how we say, the pressure of development is high, it is a challenge. I would say it's not easy. It's very challenging. And so MIM has done a study looking at stakeholders' feedback for the Center Forest Spine Plan. When we asked all the different groups of stakeholders, government, private sectors, NGOs, academicians, everyone agrees that it is a good plan and we should, implement it. But when it comes to implementation on the ground, of course, I think Dr. Sandeep, you know, the implementation part is a bit more challenging, and often that's why we need to have a lot of conversation with different stakeholders to create that win-win situation to bring people on board. So I would say, well, a big part of the Center Forest Spine, we find that connectivity is still workable for elephants, but in those areas that is getting bad, hence a lot of effort is needed. In fact, that's why MIM started our project in the southern area to see how we can work together, with the stakeholders there.
Thanks, Dr. Phin. Now I'll move to Farina, Dr. Farina, based from Peninsular to Sabah now. Dr. Farina, you have been working there in Sabah, especially in the lower Kinabatank, for quite many years, and as you said, that one of the major concern for elephant conservation in Sabah is the loss of land. About almost last 3 or 4 decades, almost around 50-60% of the prime elephant habitat have been impacted and lost and fragmented. One reason have been, the oil palm plantations coming up, the way the areas have been fenced off, and along with that, other developmental activities have come up. So, how has been your, I mean, and that has impacted the wildlife movements, whether it's orangutan, I can see, you know, so many fragmented populations, or whether it's elephants there. So how has been the, you know, interaction with these palm oil planters and at individual level and at association level, and how open they are slowly getting into the idea that you need to find way for wildlife to move, and hence open up certain areas. Because I remember during the last PhD meeting in Sabah, when we had a separate session on conservation issues of Sabah, and we had a discussion with the Planters Association. One of the ideas that came up is now we have information of elephants distribution in the landscape, how the animals have been using, the moving, the connectivity. So if based on those information, if we can identify areas which can be open up for where the power fences can be open up and you facilitate movement. So how has been the reaction of the planters overall, and how successful has been the initiative? I know Cheryl also touched upon this issue, but just wanted to know from you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for the question. So basically, I guess different. Cheryl will speak, you know, on her experience in Tawau. So for Lower Kinabatangan, basically they are, you know, we used to, the situation used to be like pointing fingers. So, you know, conservationists will blame the industry will blame the conservation people, saying that we don't understand. And but we realize that over the years, there are more and more plantation in Lower Kinabatangan who wants to do more than what is required for them to do to, you know, get certification, for example, you know, RSPO, MSPO. So we are quite lucky, you know, we get to engage with plantation, because Lower Kinabatangan is more vulnerable. It's surrounded you know, it's just a corridor. So basically elephants in Lower Kinabatangan live, you know, in corridors. So Lower Kinabatangan Wildlife Sanctuary is actually a corridor to connect a few forest reserve, very small. So and elephants are using more and more oil palm because of the replanting, like Cheryl was saying. So we are quite lucky, because for the past several years, there are more and more plantation who wants to work closely with us. You know, they took out their electric fencing, and they said that you know, we realized that since we don't kind of harass the elephants using noise cannon, or, you know, like motorcycles and things like this, the elephants are not really you know, the conflict situation really you know, decreasing. So we want to help them to see, you know, is it true if, you know, by putting electric fence in the correct area, you protect the right things, you know, like the nursery or the new replanting, will really decrease the conflict situation and damages. So that's one of the things that we are doing right now with you know, a few oil palm partners in Kinabatangan. We need, when you speak to businessmen, obviously you have to also include the dollar signs, right? You have to show them that by doing conservation, you can make money, actually, you know. So we have to also understand the situation of oil palm industries. You know, so there are a couple of projects that we are currently planning with Seratu, for example. So it's not Seratu Aatai solely. This is also a research with HUTAN-KOCP, trying to look at if you protect the riparian reserve in your plantation, for example, then you will hopefully increase the quality of the soil, and then by having, you know, better soil, then you will use less fertilizer. So fertilizer is actually one of the biggest costs for the industry. So we still need to show this. We have a couple of partners who willing to, you know, put their resources, their time to do conservation, and hopefully by having this model, then we can influence more people to understand that conservation is actually going to help you producing profits as well.
Thanks, Phin. I can understand the complexity of issues there, and you have to start in a small way, show the in a pilot in a small area, and show to the other planters that by doing these things it makes sense. It makes sense both in terms of wildlife, but it also makes sense in terms of business. So yeah, you need to pilot it and show how it works there. Also, one other aspect that I want to touch upon is Borneo highway, and a lot been discussed there. So wanted to know from you is when you already came to know about this road coming up and you started discussing with the linear agencies, with the wildlife department, with the government. I have to question is how open was the various agencies in trying to adapt to the suggestions that you have been making it. Say, for example, you had put it in option B or C in terms of realigning the roads, taking it more towards the northern part.
Right.
How adaptive these agencies were in trying to take up those recommendations. B, you also have a pool of good information in terms of elephant distribution, and Cheryl and you both showed the distribution of elephants in the entire Sabah forest area, and if the original alignment goes through, then how it's going to majorly impact wildlife movement, elephants and other wildlife movements. So have you also suggested them some mitigation measures in terms of underpasses, overpasses, or any other things, and how open these agencies have been to those suggestions or advice? I understand you, I mean, you had the coalition of 3H working on human habitat and, and the aspects. So how open these agencies and the government has been to suggestions of realignment as well as mitigation measures?
Right. So basically, like I said, we have been working this, issue since 2017, and since 2017 we have changed the government, I think, twice. So at the beginning, when I can only, because like I say, I'm the one that really engage and bring all of this. I think I have a few colleagues here from Forever Sabah. If you would allow me to also invite them to respond, that would be great. But before that, I would like to share my, little experience trying to engage with the local community. So we had like a workshop in 2019 where we tried to, convince them like different routes and really give them like the pro and cons of each route. The idea is to try to help them to realize the impact of, like human and elephants conflict, the watershed and things like this. However, at that time, we realized that, for government agencies, they really have to stick with what the government wants to do. So we understand their situation, like I said, we try to convince them that we are not against any development. We just need to, do like a development that will not cost, more money or, to mitigate things after this. So we want to do the right things, at the right time. There are certain people usually, with the, for example, the wildlife department or the road department, they understand the situation, but it's really hard for them also to try to convince the higher management. You see what I mean? Like, because the money is there, so it's very complicated. So we had like several forums already to discuss about this, and so we do receive positive and negative. Sometimes, we can see that the agencies, they want to do something, but on the other hand, they also have to kind of proceed, for people benefits, So it's really complicated. We still try to find who is the best person or who is the best party to tackle, because we know that there is someone in the government who, when he says something or she says something, it will change in just one night, you know. So we do also put mitigation methods, measures where it needs, but for Telupit area, for us, the best mitigation method is not to go through Tawai, but to, you know, either choose route 1 or route 2. So we try not to, it's not possible to provide any mitigation method that will reduce the impact over there. So if I can call anyone from Forever Sabah, we have Casey Ng here, we have Nikki. Who else here? Do you want to also respond to the engagement with the government?
Hi, this is Casey here. Good
Hi,
evening,
thank you.
everybody. So if you look at the planned Pan Borneo Highway, we are only very selective with where we want to highlight the problem. Only those very narrow problems, like for example, the big one in Telupit, we focus our energy there, and certain part of Kinabatangan and a certain part of southern Sabah, because southern Sabah is particularly risky because it's going to cut off the Heart of Borneo from the head, right? So we focus on very little stretch, not all. I mean, the Pan Borneo Highway is a great project actually. Sabah will need it. It's just a certain section that we have a concern over, and because there's always a change of government, we need to curate the whole project, keep all the information, the GPS data, and keep talking to new government, new officers that are interested to listen. And yesterday itself, 2 days ago itself, I think yesterday, one of our colleagues, Cynthia Ong, she also managed to get an appointment with the works department, and there were so many engineers sitting down and listening. So we got some inroads there lah. So we are hopeful. Okay, we keep on talking. We keep on talking to anybody who is interested. So that's the strategy.
Thank Cassie and thank Faina. You know, it's not unique to Malaysia. You know, it's there everywhere. I mean, in India as well, we had this problem, and you know, generally it is said that it's believed that as if conservationists are anti-development. No, we also want to move fast. We also want to travel fast. What we say is you have more information in terms of whether the animal movement or how it's going to impact the movement or how it's going to increase in conflict and all. And we need to go with this information and with a solution and sit with the agencies and try to say that what you are planning to do in this entire planning process, if you are able to bring in these changes and bring in these mitigation in place, then A, you are going to have a more, whether it's a railway or it's a highway, all of them wants to have an accident-free passage or thing. So for them, accidents or other things that's happened is also a loss of economy there. Also the fact that no one wants to be seen as an anti-environment or anti-wildlife stuff. So I think and the fact that is with so much awareness coming in, so much information in the scientific community coming in, and with the media playing a major role in bringing to light the various concerns, the agencies have also become very concerned that they are opening up to ideas, because no one wants to get the project put into litigation line for 4 or 5 years, fighting court cases and stuff like that. That increases the cost of things. So if you are going with a proper plan, scientific information plan, and making them understand that how it's going to impact the landscape, and how by taking up this initiative you're going to minimize it drastically, I think they will open up. But the most important thing is you bring these things at a very planning stage so that they incorporate in the proposal, even if it means 5-10% increase in the cost. That's much better than after 10 years you have to start working on ramps and overpasses and underpasses, where the cost also increases, but by the time the damage has been done. So it's basically how you put your ideas and how you convince it with hardcore science and mitigation measures, and where I think is the role of all of you, and with the type of information that you people are collecting, and that can be put to these agencies. few months back, we had a meeting with the Myanmar Railways, the WWF Myanmar have been interacting, and they have been trying to expand their railway network. And when all the impact of this linear infrastructures were explained to them, and things, small things that needs to be taken care of, they really appreciated it. And they said that when we are doing our proposal stuff and planning things, we'll keep these things in mind, and so that we have minimum impact on the environment. So the linear agencies have also started opening up, and basically we need to reach them with right information, right science, and right mitigation measures. So Pranav, thank you so much. I think it's already 8:45, 9:15 in Malaysia, so I'll not take too much of a time, and I'll come to Cheryl. Cheryl, you have been working on wildlife elephant issues in Sabah for a long time, looking at the population, the distribution, the highway linear issues. But one more aspect that I know you have been working there has been on the conflict and the various pressures on elephants, vis-a-vis about 110 odd elephants dying in less 10 years, and apart from they being getting trapped in the hindering movement being hindered. One of the important things that has been found has been poisoning of these elephants, gunshot injuries, snares being used. And I understand the Sabah Wildlife Department is doing the best to see how to contain it, how to minimize it. But I believe you and your team has also been working on this aspect, especially trying to build in intelligence network and strengthen the enforcement agencies. So is something being done on that aspect to show that, rather than reacting after the crime is done, how do we do a preventive measures here so that the animal is also safe and the crime rate comes down?
Okay. Thanks, Sandeep, for the question. It's very interesting and bit tough question, I would say. So in terms of suspected poisoning, I think Dr. Sen is here, and also Farina and all that were part of the task force. It's actually an uphill task for us because we don't know if the elephant is killed with intention or deliberately, or it's because of chronic poisoning, because of feeding long-term implantations. So basically for us, WWF, we have been advocating to these plantations through where we have this team, which is the Sustainable Palm Oil team. So they will look at different aspects. So what we think that actually is causing suspected poisoning could be probably like how they dispose certain chemicals, like spraying certain chemicals, and just sometimes they might just leave it there, or they do not properly store certain chemicals. So one of the things we've been looking at is that working with these plantations and then trying to support them to get RSPO certified, which is the Roundtable Sustainable Palm Oil Certification. So that has been actually a very huge opportunity for us to engage with these plantations, because with this certification standard, we see more and more traction and uptake from this plantation to get on board. So it's not just in terms of poisoning cases and all that, but we see they're also interested, to secure not only corridors, but also riparian areas, and to ensure that these areas are left intact and all that. So in our sense, WWF has also been, through our working group, we have tried to work with this wildlife department to actually come up with a list of what sort of chemicals that are being used in these plantations, and trying to shortlist them to see what might actually cause the elephants to die. But it's actually very hard to pinpoint on that. So yeah, Dr. Sen and his team is actually working with the National Poison Center to send these samples. So basically through that, we can actually link to our work to actually pinpoint what are the chemicals used. So hopefully we'll be able to. Yeah.
And also, are you trying to map the snares being used across the landscape, which all area has maximum number of snakes reported, and then probably working with the plantation owners and others to see how we can address this issue? I mean, in India, for example, there are various protected areas where such initiatives have been taken by the department, where they are conducting stuff like walk the snares, trying to see whether snares have been, detecting them, removing them, trying to look for people who have been doing it, and that has substantially minimized the snares in these areas. So is something like that also being planned or being done in that part?
Okay. So for our side, actually, so I think for the last 2 or 3 years, there's actually been an incident. I think throughout the year, they came out, I think there's like 4 to 5 elephants that died due to complications from snare injuries. So together, so we actually have a patrolling team. So together, my team and the patrolling team, also with the wildlife department and forestry department, we actually basically mapped out where these locations were, and then we went on the ground and we removed some of the snares. And also we actually spoke to the managers involved in those plantations that, to tell them, because a lot of times, sometimes the managers up there, they don't know what the workers are doing, or maybe it's not even the workers, it could be other people coming out from elsewhere, coming in to actually set up the snares. So by doing so, we actually not only looking for snares and trying to remove them, but also working with these plantations to actually for some plantations set up an enforcement plan, so that we know so not only snaring but also poachers going to the area, like certain areas where they should increase or put roadblocks or put a check post in those areas.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks so much. And I think I've taken, a lot of time. Is already 9:50, 9:20 at Malaysia. So I'll not take it. And I believe there are people waiting to have few more questions. So thank Dr. Phin, thanks Dr. Farina, and thanks Dr. Cheryl for sparing your time and sharing your thoughts on the conservation of elephants in Malaysia. And now I hand over the thing to Anusha. Anusha, please. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would also, in fact, like to check with our guests if they wouldn't mind staying with us for the last 5 to 10 minutes. We've had a lot of interesting questions that have come up, but however, we are really mindful of the time zone difference, and it's pretty late out there in Malaysia already. So I would like to hear from the guests. Your preference, please.
It's okay with
sure.
me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right. At this point of time, I would like to introduce my friend who's been generously collecting all the questions that have poured in. Hi, Uncle. Uncle, you're on mute.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
All right.
Probably
yes.
quickly a few questions.
Yes. So thank you so much, Anusha, and thank you everyone for this wonderful presentation. I must say most of the questions are already been answered. Thank you, Dr. Tiwari. The conversation with you has probably answered most of the questions. So let me pick a few questions, to each of the speakers maybe, and then we shall conclude. So this one is for Dr. Wang. This one comes from Isa Abghani from Facebook Live. She says, more presentation on the peninsular work. May I know why would you choose to release the elephant at Jeli area? Dr. Wong, I believe I pronounced the area correct.
Jeli area. Sorry, can you repeat the question again? Yeah.
Yes, the question is why are the elephants released in the at the Jeli area?
Okay. I'm trying to guess what's the intention of that question. I think possibly they are referring to when elephants in conflict areas are captured, they are removed and then released in a contiguous forested area where there are less people living in that area. There are some indigenous communities there. Yes, I have to admit there are still communities in that area. But in terms of the density of people in that area, so usually they find the place where you have the lesser in terms of the density of the people in the area, try to reduce the interaction between the elephant and the people. So for my project, we have been studying the impact of translocation on these elephants. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question fully, like why do they capture and release at this contiguous forested area? I think the intention of the Wildlife Department is trying to reduce the conflict at the conflict site. And instead of culling, then it is, they try to remove the animal from that site and release in a site with less people, hopefully resulting in less conflict. But I think research from my project and also many other Asian elephant countries are showing that translocation comes with many other complications as well. For example, one, the elephants could find their way back to the conflict site. That's one. And number two, it could cause more conflicts as they are trying to find their way back. Yeah. And number three is, for my study, I find that the translocated elephants, their behavior change. Yeah, is when we look at the resident elephants, their behavior, and the translocated elephants' behavior, their behavior change. And of course, when we look at elephants as a social animal with family groups and all that, so we need to take into account all this information before, when we carry out translocation. Hence, I think, there's all this consideration to translocation. Yeah, I hope I answered what the question's intention is.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. Right, the next one is for Dr. Othman. The question is it possible for the authorities to upgrade the existing road? This is for the Borneo highway project. So is it possible to consider to upgrade the existing roads and developing?
Yeah. So in general, yes, there are a lot of possibility. That's the best actually to do, is just to upgrade the current route. But for the Telupit case, like I said, the local communities doesn't want it. They sign a petition because if the government wants to upgrade the current route, then they have to, sacrifice their land. They have to, although they will be compensated, but they prefer not to. In other places, like in Kalabakan area, so the best is also to upgrade the existing road instead of try to add to 4 lanes. Having the current road also, we still need a lot of maintenance and things like that. So the best actually to do that. But yeah, it's not happening.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. The last one to Dr. N. What are the challenges to persuade and convince palm oil plantations and companies to accept the presence of elephants as part of the landscape that they operate in and make changes to their operation policies and procedures and plantation setup to allow elephant movement? I think this was partially answered when Dr. Sandeep Tiwari brought up this point. So would you want to add something more to this, Dr. N?
Okay. So basically, I would say awareness. So, for example, when I first the WWF first established this working group and got people on board, initially some of these plantations that have been experiencing substantial crop damages were very angry, and most of the time it's not easy to tell people to set aside their land or corridor to allow elephants to move through it, because their core business is to generate revenue for the producing palm oil. So in a sense, it was not easy, but then through a long-term targeted approach and through several working group meetings, and also what was also important was that because we had scientific backed data, so we could show them that the elephants was using certain areas and by removing certain fences at particular areas, it would reduce bottlenecks. And in that sense, it would facilitate movement of elephants to other areas and reduce conflict. So I guess it's all boils down to awareness and spending more time with these targeted or affected communities to help them to better understand the conflict situation and to better deal with it. Yeah.
And can I add to that as well, Uncle?
Yes,
so
yes.
you have to understand that oil palm companies, they have several, you have like big players, you have intermediate players. So usually, the big players, they have, bureaucracy, a lot of levels of managers. The people who have troubles with conflicts is the managers on the plantations, and usually, their KPI, what is KPI in English?
Key performance index.
Yeah, okay, so it's in English actually. Their KPI is based on how much, which plantations produce the most, and you will be given bonuses based on, how much you produce per ton, hectare, something like that. So they are the one who face, every day the situation, the conflict situation. They want to do something, but then, you have to go to the regional manager and then, go to Kuala Lumpur officers and stuff like that who, don't see the real situation. So like in Kinabatangan, we're working with people who make it's a intermediate oil palm company. So, usually the decisions are made in the plantations by, the controller who works there, who see that. So so it's depend as well. So it will take a lot of efforts to engage with them and to make people who sit in the offices to understand the situation in the field on the ground.
And I also believe it's about sustainability, right? And it's also
quickly just add, so
choice for a sustainable,
Yeah, so based on what Farina also mentioned, so one important thing that we also found very effective, or a lesson learned, is to get a champion from the plantation industry. So like for our side, we managed to get this manager from this plantation called Sabah Softwoods Berhad. So we've been engaging him for so many years, so he knows the situation. So we got him to actually present in another working group which we just established. So we found that very helpful because he's able to give conservation from a business perspective. So the other plantation people are will be more willing to listen to him compared to us, like from the conservation area. So that's very helpful.
Right, perfect. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think we will take one last question. This is a very generic question to all of you. The question is, how is the impact of tourism been on elephant conservation in Borneo? And now that the world is on lockdown, halt of tourism, do you see any population thriving because of this?
Shall I start? So Kinabatangan is actually the best area if people wants to come and observe wild elephants or hutan, proboscis monkeys. So indeed, the COVID really affected the the tourism activities. The one who suffers are the people who really depends on these activities. But the elephants, I wouldn't say that they are thriving because they're still in Kinabatangan facing a lot of challenges with other stuff, not only tourism. But we do see that they are coming more to the riverbank. When they are in the riverbank, we can see that they, really, and they really enjoy more. Because before this, you will have like maybe 10 or 20 tourist boats and stuff like that. But I would say that it needs more than the tourism to see our elephant population doing better.
Right. Dr. Othman, Dr. Wong, you would like to add? All right, then I think we could conclude the question and answer session. Anusha, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Uncle. Thanks to all our guests, Dr. Farina, Dr. Cheryl, Dr. Phin, Sandeep Tiwari, and all the participants who have stayed with us for the 2 hours and heard all our guests. Thank you for painting this very holistic picture, about this wicked problem, if we can call so, about, between conservation and development. Again, I cannot thank you enough. And I would like to say, everyone, please take care and stay safe. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, God. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.